Hey everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with JRP. We're currently in our third week of reading my book, Laurence Grey, Secret of the Lost Roanoke Colony, and we're currently in chapter 15. So if you're just joining us, head back to chapter 1 so you don't miss any crucial details. So a brief recap of where we are so far. The historian Laurence Grey and his friend Jack Larrabee and his son Jason have all set out and accidentally accessed the secret government website known as RAN, Relocations Agents National. And so, consequently, the government arrested them, and Gray's in Area 51, and his son and his friend are elsewhere. We don't know where yet. And Gray's being interrogated by the evil General Sheldon, forcing Gray to reveal that he saw blueprints for a time machine on the website. So that's where we're going to pick up now, continuing that discussion in Chapter 15 titled, Negotiations Continue. General Sheldon decided that he should change tactics with Gray. Gray revealed he knew too much about the time machine, but there was much more than just that on the website. The general figured that if he gave Gray all the answers the latter wanted, he would get the answers that he wanted. Sheldon sighed and began, "Laurence, I believe it is time I came clean with you. Your friend and son are safe. You really are in Area 51, but sorry, aliens aren't real. And now, the following is nationally top secret, ultra classified. In fact, this whole conversation is classified. You can never tell anyone anything. Nobody. We don't want terrorists in the highest level of our government." Gray took that well. "In that case, I should be honest about what I saw on the site then. I did see more than just the supposed time machine. I saw many things, but they were so strange that I don't think I quite understand what I saw. So how about you just tell me about everything on the site, and perhaps I can get a better understanding of what I saw?" General Sheldon looked skeptical, but Gray knew what he was thinking. "You might as well, sir. I mean, I already know about the site itself and Area 51, so I'm already a security risk. At this point, you should just tell me everything." Sheldon laughed. "Well, not everything." "Oh, of course," conceded Gray. "Can we begin at why the website was created?" Sheldon nodded. "Certainly. That one's easy. It was created simply as a database for the collection of the Roanoke information. Nothing more." "Oh, okay," replied Gray. "How about the website's title? RAN?" The general chuckled. "Oh, that's just a front. A last-effort chance at swaying potential hackers." Gray nodded. "I guess I can see that. And finally, the biggest question of it all. Obviously, there's more to Roanoke than just the colony's disappearance. So, what's going on?" Five-star General Phil Sheldon fell silent. He knew it would come to this. The only way he would get Gray to help the cause would be if he told Gray everything. No normal, sane person would work for a cause that he or she had no idea consisted of. But Gray did have a point. He did know some things. So at this point, Sheldon might as well tell Gray all. The general took a deep breath and began. "First, Laurence, I must confess I haven't been entirely honest with you. There are aliens, and they were a key component in the history of Roanoke." Gray tried to hold in some chuckles. "Aliens, right. What's next? The colony gets abducted or something?" The general remained dead serious. "Actually, they do." Laurence stared at the general. "Excuse me?" Just then, scuffles and shouts were heard outside the conference room Gray and Sheldon were sitting in. Suddenly, to Gray's surprise and Sheldon's shock, Jason and Jack Larrabee came bursting in the door, followed by a half-dozen security FBI guards. "Dad!" screamed Jason. Gray leapt from his chair and embraced Jason. "Oh, my son, I will never take you out of my sight again," he said. The general sighed. "All right, Keeler, let him be." The head guard, who apparently was FBI agent Keeler, gestured to the other 5 guards. The 6 of them curtly marched out of the room. Jack and Jason looked to the general. "Well," conceded Sheldon, "you two were bound to be involved in this eventually, so you might as well sit down and hear this too." Jason sat down next to Laurence. Jack shook Gray's hand, adding a subtle wink before also taking a seat on Gray's other side. General Sheldon resumed his position at the end of the conference table. "All right, Jack. Jason, I was just telling Laurence here about the secret history of the Roanoke Colony. It's the reason why you're all here." Gray steepled his hands and said, "So, you expect me to believe that the entire Roanoke Colony, houses and all, was abducted by aliens from outer space?" "I don't expect you to believe it, Gray," said 5-star General Phil Sheldon gravely. "However, I do expect you to shut up and listen. Take it like a man. Yes, there are aliens, and they did abduct the entire Roanoke Colony, houses and all. But as crazy as that sounds, that's not the most important part of Roanoke's history. It's why. The cause and effect. You see, believe it or not, the aliens were more than just flyby abductors. They came with an express purpose, which was nothing less to take over the world. Our founding fathers had to act fast. Before the other nations could think of anything to say, the imminent alien forces... pardon me. Before the other nations could think of anything to say to the imminent alien forces, they came up with an idea. They asked the aliens if one colony could be sacrificed to save the rest of the world. Well, that's when our founding fathers found out what kind of people we were dealing with. These aliens were not as hostile as they seemed. They merely, shall we say, lacked a sense of manners. They wanted to observe humans, the way they behaved, when put under very unusual circumstances. The general paused for a moment. All three listening seemed to be either in shock or having a really hard time believing it. Just try to be open to possibilities, guys. Everything imaginable can happen, and around here, it usually does. Sheldon could see he wasn't really going to get a response, so he continued with his story. Obviously, our founding fathers did not want to give up any colony, but something had to be done if Earth was to remain in its current state. So far, none of the commoners of the world knew about extraterrestrial negotiations. Only the world leaders knew, thanks to an alien representative sent to each capital of every country. Our fathers wanted to keep it that way, and you can see that they have. They knew that they should offer the smallest colony possible to aliens. They chose Roanoke. The aliens informed our fathers that the colony would not be harmed. They were simply planning on moving the colony to a different place in the country to observe how the colonists responded. But despite most of the U.S. being populated, the colonists have yet to be found. Phil Sheldon, 5-star general of the FBI, Area 51 Division, was shocked to see how well all three of his guests and prisoners were taking all this. But as yet, not one of them had said a word until Jack Larrabee spoke up. I ain't no scientist or anything, but since it's been like forever since this all happened, how do you know all this? Good question, Larrabee, said the general. A very good question. This is where you come in, Grey. The aliens back in the 1600s were as technologically advanced as we are now. They gave our fathers what we thought was a USB drive. Obviously, we weren't even close to inventing computers then, but the aliens knew what they were doing. They figured that by the time humanity invented something that could be compatible with that USB drive, they would be all done with their observation experiments. Goes to show the aliens weren't all bad after all. They told the world leaders, which included our founding fathers, that this drive would give the world a complete history on the incident, should we forget, along with a clue on how to find the colonists. A clue, huh? Sighed Jason. Typical. Why can't they just say, here's the colonists, treat them fairly? Good point, Jason, said the general. However, as cryptic as a clue is, it gets even more complex. The aliens gave the USB drive to the first person they met, which happened to be Benjamin Franklin's grandfather. Somehow, the aliens created the USB drive to be accessible only to Franklin's grandfather and all his descendants. Since computers were obviously not invented yet, Franklin's grandfather stored away the USB drive and passed it down from generation to generation. Finally, in the 90s, a Franklin descendant downloaded the drive to his computer, which somehow got transferred to somewhere on the internet. Our analysts deducted that a code is needed to discover the website which the USB information was hidden on. The knowledge of this code, combined with being a descendant of Franklin's grandfather, is what would access the site. And you, Laurence Grey, are that descendant. Before I accept what you're trying to imply, began Laurence Grey, help me clear up one issue. Shoot, said Sheldon. Grey looked around and said, I'm confused. You're acting like the website has yet to be discovered. I thought I already discovered it. Isn't that why they brought me in? One reason, yes, replied Sheldon. But no, you did not actually find the alien website. You found our top-secret Area 51 website. Two completely different things. Yeah, about that, began Grey, but the general cut him off. Please, classified. Oh, right, conceded Grey. So, are you saying I'm the only person that can access the website because I'm Franklin's descendant? Sheldon nodded. Exactly. We need you to unlock the code and perhaps find the colony's descendants, if they're still around. Grey shook his head. This is cool and all, but I got a life back in Connecticut, with responsibilities and... Grey! Boomed the general. This is not a negotiation. Your country needs you. Grey saluted. My apologies, sir. Where do we begin? General Sheldon took Grey and company to a giant room filled with computers. Sheldon brought the trio to an empty terminal. Now, Grey, stated Phil Sheldon, due to the nature of the complex alien technology, only you can discover the passcode to the alien database. Others could try guessing the code for years, but because they're not Franklin's direct descendant, they cannot possibly hope to find it. Jason spoke up. Hey, so that means I can find it too, right? Sheldon nodded. That's correct. I will bring you to your own terminal. Jack looked left out. The general took notice and said, Hey, bud, why don't I take you to our very own Area 51 cafe? I heard they make a mean salt pork. This did not seem to console Jack at all, but he moved to join Sheldon. But right as Sheldon was leaving with Jason and Jack, Gray waved Sheldon back over to the former's computer. So, General, began Gray, what should I do with that knowledge I gained from your Area 51 site? Like, what about that time machine? The General gave him an evil eye. Not a word, Gray. Not a word. With a computer mouse in one hand and an espresso in the other, Laurence Grey began a trial and error search for the alien passcode to their website. Some FBI operatives had informed him that their top analysts had determined that the only way to discover the passcode is to type in the desired words into the search bar on the internet. They figured that when the correct code was typed in, it would link them to the alien website. It turned out to be quite an exhausting search for Gray, and for Jason too. For days they went at it. Up at 5 in the morning, started at 5:15, 15-minute break at noon, then back to work until 10 p.m., and the cycle began again. It was taking quite a toll on them both. Gray requested more sleep time, but General Sheldon said that they were being very generous, as the average FBI worker only got 3 hours of sleep. Although Gray knew better than to argue with the hardened general, he wondered as to the general's motives. Would a regular general be so obsessed with finding a website which could only lead them to a group of colonists' descendants in desperate need of a culture shock? But realizing he was getting off track, he stored away the thought and resumed his work. On Gray's 3,456,798th try at the code, day number 27, he hit the jackpot. He entered his full name into the search bar along with his birth date, and that he was a descendant of Benjamin Franklin. The computer screen rapidly flickered in an unsettling manner. To Gray's shock, green words on the black screen appeared, which read, Welcome, Laurence David Gray, age 35, of Hartford, Connecticut. We have been expecting you. Gray was completely dumbfounded. The aliens were much more technologically advanced than he could ever imagine. Gray quickly called in Jason, Jack, and General Sheldon. Once they were all seated, Gray clicked on a large on-screen button that read, Proceed to site. Gray could only imagine what strange things the site would tell him about. Entering the site, Gray and Jason discovered a vast amount of alien data pertaining to their involvement with the Roanoke Colony. It was very detailed, down to who talked to who, at what time, day, year, and where. As expected, Sheldon and Jack could not see what was on the site because they were not Franklin's descendants. Gray copied and pasted all the information to a USB drive for the government to see. If it was on the drive, not on the website, the non-relatives would be able to see it. Gray skipped the detailed history of Roanoke, leaving it for the experts, and went straight to the clue the aliens left. Finally, after all these years, began General Sheldon. Oh, wait, that's not his voice. Finally, after all these years, began General Sheldon in awe, we could finally have a place to begin searching for the lost colonists. Gray began to read the clue. Begin your search 1,250 cubits west of the location where your nation's capital would soon be established. Well, that's easy, proclaimed Jason. The general was stumped. Well, I know our nation's capital. Everyone does. But I don't recognize the measurement of cubits. Jason smiled a bit condescendingly. A cubit, he began, is an ancient Hebrew measurement that is an arm length long, so about 2 feet. So 1,250 cubits is about 2,500 feet. That's less than a mile. More like half a mile. The general, although he was being bested by a 14-year-old, was beaming. Okay, everyone, he proclaimed. Let's get in my private chopper and head to Washington, D.C. He marched towards the exit door, Jason and Jack following. Gray was hesitant. Sheldon turned around and said, March, Gray. You signed up for this, not me. But I actually didn't sign up, began Gray, only to be interrupted by the general who bellowed, Forward, troops! Moving on! Gray reluctantly followed. The chopper took them to a plane, and the plane took them to D.C. They all left the airport and went to the Capitol. They measured how far 2,500 feet was from the Capitol. They arrived at a random intersection. Jason smacked his head in disgust. How could we be so stupid? He said. Our nation's first capital was in Philadelphia, not D.C. All right, things are really moving along now. The alien website is starting to tell them exactly where the colonists could be hidden. They thought it was in Washington, D.C., but it turns out it's in Philadelphia. It looks like they're getting closer, but what will happen next in chapter 22? We'll have to find out tomorrow, guys. All right, I'll see you then.